Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Seaver Show. Glad to be back with you this week as we dive into another topic. For those of you who know, Green Bay Packers are a common team, one of our favorite football teams that we'd followed our whole lives. Obviously made a good run towards the end of the season. Season cut short, week 18 at home against the Lions, and then starts the conversation of what's Raj doing. He was on the McAfee show earlier this week to kind of talk about where he sits. Said that he had meetings with the Packers to kind of discuss the future of the team and himself. Sounds like we're still a ways away from him. Well, a ways away, a couple weeks, it sounds like at the earliest it could be, to where we learn what he's going to do. But I guess what's kind of your take on the whole situation? Obviously, how the whole season ended. Where does Rodgers fit into the situation for years to come? And the Packers as a whole, what do they do this offseason to try to get better?
Well, we'll just look at the numbers here. The salary cap is projected to go up to $225 million roughly, and we're only projected to have $3.3 million available in cap space at the moment. I know Aaron Jones was talking about restructuring his deal, but going back to the Rodgers interview that he had with McAfee, he mentioned a handful of guys that he would like to have on the team. Alan Lazard, Tanyan, and Mercedes Lewis. I'll just go those three right off the top. To re-sign all of those three, Lazard carries a 9.5 average value, Tanyan carries a 6 average value, and Mercedes Lewis carries a 1.5. So right there, that's $11 million. We don't have the room for it. Also, looking at other issues with the Packers contracts, I know Rodgers has been the main topic. I personally believe, unless he's willing to take a team-friendly deal with as little money as possible, restructuring his money, there's no possible way I think that the Packers should keep him in this case. Jordan Love would carry an average value of only $3.9 million. He would only be guaranteed 2.2 was what his deal was for this last season. Obviously going to restructure going forward. We could see that jumping up maybe $500,000 because the league, obviously all the numbers go up.
Right.
Figuring $500,000. So he'd be about 2.7. Looking at the Aaron Rodgers contract, if we trade him post June 1, the Packers lose $22 in dead cap, but we also gain
22 million.
Yeah, in dead money that we
You said
lose.
$22.
Oh,
It's like,
my bad.
damn, take that deal, take it.
Yeah, 22 million would be the dead money that we lose. However, we would gain $17 million in cap room.
For this season.
Yeah, for this season, and then we'd get $36 million next year, and we would get 30 the following added to our cap structure. So almost $80 million we'd gain in cap room over the next 3 years if he is traded post June 1st. Traded pre-June 1, the Packers would not want to have this in their options at all. And I know that's kind of, you want to trade him as soon as possible. But
Right.
on the books for the Packers here, if we trade him pre-June 1, the Packers take a $68 million dead cap hit, and we're negative $27 million in cap space. So we obviously can't afford to take that on the books and be able to sign anybody to our roster. So that is one thing that is against the wall. I mean, like I said, if he restructures and takes a team-friendly deal, like minimum amount, real cheap, and turn it all into a bonus, keep him. But if he's not willing to move on the money, I feel like it's time for the Packers to let him go. Last 3 clutch games at home to move on. He's lost all 3. He hasn't played the best in all of those. Granted, he was banged up this year. Team was hurt half the year, but how many excuses can we give the guy? I mean, he took us to that one Super Bowl with promises of getting us to another one real quick, or with at least within the next 10 years. We've fallen short every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying it's all his fault, but because of the amount of money we've given him and kind of allowed him to control the Green Bay Packers organization from inside out, we're now stuck in this spot where I say rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah, I say we rip the money. I say we rip it off and fucking just cut his ass. We cut him and let him be a free agent and go wherever he wants to go. Because in that we'd save $17 million in cap space by
Right.
cutting him. But obviously
So,
Green Bay wants compensation,
oh
they're gonna
yeah,
want
they
some
they don't want to let the guy
compensation.
walk, but like you said, if in the books it makes sense to do it that way, and kind of going off of that, there are four scenarios that can happen. He stays, he retires, he's traded, he's cut. Three of four of those, he is not quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. That being said, three out of the four options point towards him not being in the green and gold next year. Do you think Jordan Love has shown us enough to be the next guy up? Or does a part of this whole equation include bringing another quarterback into Green Bay?
I have two thoughts to that. One, Jordan Love. I believe with the team that we had this season, Rodgers didn't throw for any games over 300. He didn't do anything crazy. I think Jordan Love could have got us to 8-9. I'm leaving it at that. I'm not dissing Rodgers, I'm just saying with the team that we had, I feel like with Jordan Love, what we saw of him, I feel like we could have gotten to 8-9 exactly where we are right now. Second option, Jordan Love before the end of the season said if he is not starting in green and gold next season, he's requesting a trade and is gone. So there goes our backup quarterback gone. So then we possibly have zero quarterbacks.
Yeah, there's a
That
scenario
goes
where we
into
lose both.
and that goes into my mind of if that happens, Packers, I feel if Jordan Love really is hard on getting out, I feel like that plays into Rodgers coming back because that allows a little bit more money, a little bit this, a little bit that
And
to
there's not a young
entice him.
guy biting at his heels now anymore,
Right.
at least for
And
now.
he's going to be able to be safe the entire season, no matter what happens.
Right.
But knowing Rodgers, I don't think he wants to even put himself in that situation where he's not able to play his best. With that Rodgers thing, it's like if we trade him and get some compensation, look at these teams in the top 5 that need a quarterback. Colts, quarterback. I say we send Rodgers to Indianapolis. We take their 4th pick, 5th pick, whatever it is, use that as leverage and get CJ Stroud. That would be my other he would be the guy out of the draft if we were to have a guy that I would say let's give him a chance. But Jordan Love, knowing the system, knowing that, I would rather have Jordan Love. And that's where back to the beginning, is just rip the Band-Aid off, I feel like. And it's time. Like, let Raj go somewhere else. Like, Green Bay as a whole is going to appreciate him for everything he's done. He brought us a Super Bowl, Hall of Fame Packer, legend. But there's a time. Look at Peyton Manning. Fucking Colts cut his ass. They didn't even trade him. They said, "Hey, bud, you're not good enough anymore. Sorry, we have Andrew Luck." He goes and wins a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. Like he had his hand pick of where he wanted to go. I feel like he could do that same thing to get himself one more Super Bowl and then ride off into the sunset.
Right.
But all indications to me doesn't seem like we should, or he is going to be a Green Bay Packer next season.
Right. And I feel like too, and obviously the media kind of last couple of years has had it out for him to kind of be the bad guy. I know last night we talked about this, and it's a phrase that even though it's used, and I can see the way people use it, but I personally don't like it, is that he is holding the Green Bay Packers hostage with his contract. There's two at the bottom of that contract, there's two lines. He signs a line, they sign a line. They know what they're getting into. So even though it's from the outside in, oh, he's all this dead cap space, he's not playing how he should. Okay, but that's a risk you take on all 53 men on your roster. Are they going to basically whatever you're paying them, X amount of $1 million a year, you're hoping that they play worth more than what you're paying them. You know what I mean? That's because then you're ahead. Then your investment paid off. Obviously, you're paying Rodgers $50+ million a year, whether that's a cap hit or what he is getting in his
This season would be
contract.
67.
67. It's hard to play up to being worth $67 million a year.
Yeah, number 1 QB contract. Number 1
Yeah.
hands down by a lot.
And if you're
Like even Deshaun got his 230 million guaranteed. Rodgers
Mhm.
contract still is number one.
Right, right. And obviously, because you're being paid that high, if you're not top three quarterbacks that year, then you're not living up to what you should have done.
And the interesting thing, looking at the Rodgers contract, him putting this gap year into this contract because he signed a 3-year extension. This is the only year on the books where the Packers don't have to pay him a $5 million roster bonus.
So it's like built into where he's gonna leave.
This would be the year where he would in the contract on the books to go if he's going to.
And since it's a signing bonus, they don't like get that money back or anything, right? They don't get that back in cap.
Nope, he has 15.666 million in other bonuses in $5 million roster bonus built into the contract. He gets a 15.6 million bonus this year, whatever that entails. I'm sure it's stats and all that. But then the following two, a $5 million roster bonus is added into the contract, which it's funny because this year, going next year, he takes up 15.9% of the Green Bay Packers total cap space. The following, it goes up to 21%. And then the following year, it drops down, but it's still higher at 17.4%. So he basically is a huge fraction of the Packers roster
Right.
in the cap spot. And that's where I said he's either going to have to budge or we're going to have to let him go.
Yeah. And I feel like it's funny looking at both situations, him and Brett Favre. This is very much like Favre's last year. They fall short. They fall short. Obviously, Favre's last game was a playoff game versus the Giants, so at least he made it to the playoffs. Rodgers, even though obviously all the stars don't align perfectly, there's a lot of similarities, and I feel like no matter what, no matter how they handle the situation, when he does leave, because eventually he has to retire or he has to get cut or traded, like that he can't stay forever, is there's already going to be hurt feelings. And I could already see it being like a Brett Favre situation to where, at least for the first couple of years of him leaving, he's kind of hated. People don't like him. There's this bad narrative about him. He already has that. So it just makes you wonder if he does go elsewhere and play football, is he hated by the Green Bay organization, at least for the next couple of years until they make amends and they put him in the Packers Hall of Fame, and kind of how Brett Favre is now with the Packers. People are neutral about him now. They don't love the guy again, but they don't hate him as much as they used to. I could see Rodgers kind of being the same way.
I mean, that's an interesting thing. And then talking about one of the guys that Rodgers loves dearly is David Bakhtiari, like his contract. He's the second paid highest left tackle in football, and he hasn't played in almost a year. Like he hasn't played a full season in 2.5 years.
Right.
If we cut him as well, obviously this would be, if the Packers are going to tear this apart, I say we tear this apart.
Oh yeah, break it down all the way.
And cutting Bakhtiari, which you'd save he has a $9.5 million roster bonus added into his contract this season. If we cut him, we save $17 million in cap post June 1.
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel in, like, I know the word hostage is like hard, but I almost kind of use that word in a sense of he has us he has the Packers organization in the room with the door closed and his hand on the doorknob. Like if he's out, we exactly know what's going on. If he keeps that door closed, obviously there's a lot of shit that needs to be worked out. But
Right.
we're at his despair. Like our franchise, the Green Bay Packers franchise literally hangs in this man's decision of if he's staying or going.
Mm-hmm. And going off of what you said, if he goes, I think the way you build a dynasty, and I think that why the Packers haven't been able to build a dynasty for the last 30 plus years between Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers is when you have generational talent step in under center, they cover a a lot of issues underneath the surface that should get dealt with. When you have a phenomenal quarterback, they cover a lot of that stuff up. And I think because Jordan Love could be back to back to back another generational Hall of Fame quarterback talent. Who knows? We might never find out. We might find out this coming season. I wouldn't say 2 seasons because it sounds like he'll be gone if he's not QB1 this coming year. But I think for the Packers to kind of break themselves down and start from the bottom, whether it's coaching or players, and just kind of rebuild, take a couple years to rebuild, that's where you start to get like dynasties. You look at the Rams, they took a while to rebuild. They went and won a Super Bowl. The 49ers, they look like they could win a Super Bowl this year after a couple bad years in the past decade to kind of get those draft picks and build back up. The Packers have been in the playoffs for so long that we can never get a good draft pick. So if they can find themselves in the bottom 5, bottom 8 teams for the next couple years, get a couple top 10, top 5 draft picks, that's where you can finally rebuild. And obviously, for how as long as we've been alive, the Packers have basically been in the playoffs with the exception of a couple years. So as much as you want to see them have success now, I'd rather be patient and let them put in the work now so that in 3, 5, 7 years, if we have to build back to that point to get back to the big dance, then I mean, I think every fan of their favorite team would be willing to like buy into that. But can the team buy into that is the more important question, because how we think has no effect on what they're actually going to do.
I just feel like the biggest implication on whether he comes back or not is not the people that are coming back. It's not, do we have a team that can compete to get to a Super Bowl? Looking around the league, look at how many fucking monster teams there are. Like the Niners, what they have on their hands seems like gold for the next couple of years.
They have a surplus. That's
yeah.
They have the
at
opposite
every
problem.
position. Yeah, and you don't hear about them ever getting in cap trouble.
Right.
You know, like it's always, it seems like, granted, it could be just because the media that we've heard our whole lives of living in Wisconsin, but it's like you still hear on Packers are in trouble. Packers are like, yeah, I like like I said again, is just like if the Packers want to move, I'm not even going to say rebuild. I don't think we even need to go all the way to rebuild with Jordan Love. It's just a reload. And that's what Rodgers, the words that he used to is like, if the Packers are saying rebuild, he's done. Like he ain't going to a team that's in a rebuild.
Right.
He wants a reload. And just looking at some of the people that we could get rid of. One, we didn't have Gary the whole basically second half of the season, and Guy's a monster. So that impact on our defense. But then Jones is restructuring his deal. Who knows what that number is going to come to? I know AJ Dillon also wanted to restructure to save more money. Bakhtiari, I think he should restructure as well and get a team fair deal and prove himself if he wants one. You know, he could be on his last round the course too, you know, so he could take a team friendly deal and say, you know what, I'd rather want to go try to win one more Super Bowl, take a team deal. And Rodgers too is like, save a little bit, open up the free agency money, and let's go get some guy. Like, let's one time in our lifetime, let's go overhaul some guys and let's go for it. Like these teams who have consistently been there in the end these last 4 years in the Super Bowl have gone and got guys during the year. Late in the postseason, they've stuck with their core group, and then they've just loaded in talent. And the Packers, I feel like, could do that. Like Savage on the back end, he's a guy that I feel like we could get rid of, draft a corner in the draft somewhere. And that would save the Packers $7.9 million if we trade him. Like, there's a lot of things on the books I feel like the Packers could do. It's just going to take a lot. It's going to come down to what Raj wants, you know?
Yeah.
Like Hopkins, I know he said that he would like to be a Green Bay Packer.
Adam Thielen.
There's Adam Thielen, you know? Like, there's guys out there the Packers could get there again. Are the players. That's what I feel like it is. It's the offices went players. You guys, and now we're to the point where all these players are going to have to take team friendly deals if they want to keep the band together.
Right. And that's the thing too, is you mentioned these other super teams. You mentioned the 49ers. I put the
The
Chiefs
Chiefs,
and
the
the
Bills,
Bills.
the Bengals, the Dolphins,
Yeah, all those
the
teams kind of in the
Chargers.
same situation where they have a lot of great young talent and they haven't quite hit the point where they got to pay them all yet. So they're in a really good spot. Um, that being said,
Well,
like
like
you
the
meant,
Chiefs, they lose Tyreek Hill, best wide receiver in the league for yards,
right?
whatever.
They're
They
still
don't
the number
skip it.
one
They don't
seed.
skip a
Yeah,
beat.
yeah.
Like all these, the Niners, they add McCaffrey. Their team.
But also look at what the Chiefs did. Tyreek Hill leaves. They bring in MVS and Smith Schuster.
And Tony
Yeah, and Tony, who,
and McKinnon,
yeah,
who literally leads the league in receiving touchdowns as a running back.
yeah. But basically, even though there's a handful of teams here that on paper and how they've played recently look better than the Packers, if you can get Rodgers to be his MVP perfect self in a playoff game for 3 or 4 games in a row, however many games you have to play in the postseason, that is a very hard man to beat. They just haven't been able to get that out of him. The defense has done their part. At least down the stretch, special teams kind of did their part. And again, the offense and a lot of it falling on Rodgers' shoulders, he has not lived up to what he's needed to do. So if you're the Packers, you can get the other two phases to keep doing what they're doing and get him to put up 30, 40 points a game, game after game. They're going to be hard to beat.
It's going to an offensive league. Look at all these points that teams score.
Right.
The Niners are arguably the only team that has consistently, well, I should say Baltimore Ravens too, are the only two teams consistently year after year who have stellar defenses that hold their opponents to minimal points. All these offenses, all these teams have turned to, it's all offense now. Like with the rules, it all plays towards the off. Like you need a high power, fast scoring offense, and you need a defense that can hold on and get a stop. You need
Right.
one stop. If your offense scores every time, you're winning the game.
Yeah.
And that's almost what it turned into. And then obviously the ironic part of that is once you get to the postseason, that all changes, and it's defense in the run game. But it's getting through the regular season with everything so high powered and so let's score 40 points a game. I don't care if we give up 35, we're scoring 42. Packers, I feel like, have always neglected the offense outside of Rodgers. Like we have pieces. Like look at the rookie Watson and
Dobbs.
Dobbs. If them with another year in the system, we bring in a vet, Hopkins, a Thielen, somebody who can ball and go for it, a true number one, OBJ, a true number one target that guy across on the other team knows we got to watch this guy. That's what you need on the Green Bay Packers. Devontae Adams, since he left, that has exposed our offense, our play calling, a lot of what we do on the offensive end. And I know we've talked about it all season long. Too many times we stall out offensively and can't get a point, can't get a first down. We go stretches of not being all these other teams that don't happen. Maybe one drive a quarter,
Right.
not 4 straight in a row or a whole second half. You can't fucking score a point.
Right.
If he's going to stay, like, I feel like he's literally going to be like, I want to win a Super Bowl, one more. Like he doesn't want his time to be wasted. I don't want his time to be wasted. And I don't want the Packers' time to be wasted.
Exactly.
And it might just be the best of both, like it might be a tough pill to swallow. But if he does walk and we have a successful season, it's a win-win.
Right.
He's got to go to the AFC, though.
Speaking of that, perfect tangent, and we'll kind of wrap up this episode here. Rodgers leaves, whether he's cut or traded. What team do you see him going to?
There's 3 that fit actually 4. Let's go 4 teams that fit perfectly and it makes sense. Let's go to the top spot where I think he will. Tennessee Titans, if he does go. I think he's going to go. He's got a complimentary run game. They're gonna have the cap space to sign some wide receivers. Their defense is great. It's kind of like the Packers of the AFC. They're good every single year. Yada yada yada. They've had a couple downfall years in the past 20, but they're consistent. Second spot, Miami Dolphins. What are they doing with Tua? Is he even going to want to play again? Clearly we've seen their team can't operate with Jacoby Brissett and Thompson as their quarterbacks with that offense that they have. Rodgers sets in there with the top 2 wide receivers in football. That defense buzzes. I don't know. But the only thing is, I know he's not really a big Florida guy. The humidity, no one really likes playing down there. Colts, obviously, they have the draft pick that would make it interesting for the Packers at the number 5 spot. They also have a lot of people on their team.
I think
after their disaster,
they got to be 4 or 3 because the Seahawks are 5.
Oh, okay. So they must be 4 then. But still, looking at the type of year that they had, they might say we're in a rebuild situation, depending on what they do at the quarterback position. That obviously all has a big implication on that. But I could see him fitting in there just nice. Complimentary
Jonathan
run
Taylor,
game.
Michael Pittman. Yeah.
You have a great defense. You have they are good. For whatever reason, they just had a terrible year this year.
And McAfee would love that.
He would. I know he definitely would. And so that whole show plus the media, him in studio every day, kind of all, if he's going to move into the media, after, it kind of makes sense
for him to be there.
And then the last spot would be Las Vegas. Going back with Devontae. And ride off into the sunset. Closer to home. They have weapons. Darren Waller, a tight end. That's one thing the Packers have been missing, I feel like, ever since we have been to the Super Bowl or deep runs in we've never had a tight end that is you can rely on every single time to catch the ball, get 7-8 yards first down.
Right. And there's one team that I had in mind, and I was waiting to see if you were going to say it or not, and I'm glad you didn't, because now I have one to throw into the mix. And just today I saw something on it, which would be interesting, and after thinking about it, makes sense. The New York Jets, they decided that they're going to stay with Zach Wilson to maybe give the guy another shot. But obviously, the way we've seen his career fold out so far, if they can get an Aaron Rodgers or an upgrade at quarterback, they're going to take it. Young offensive talent. Speaking of talking about holding hostage before, the Jets have kind of done that with their receivers. Mims and Moore both said, "Get me out of here. I wanted to be traded." They didn't. They kept them. So they have good young talent that wanted out of a team because they could not connect with their quarterback. Aaron Rodgers comes in. He has some decent guys to throw to. And then obviously that defense, top 10 the last couple of years, and they look like they're getting a little bit better and better each year. And from what I saw today, which is where I thought about the Jets, Joe Namath said that he would allow 12 to be unretired for Aaron Rodgers to wear it if he came to New York. I saw that today. So that kind of interesting narrative to throw out there. But regardless, on paper, New York Jets, I think, would be a good team as well.
Yeah, just only Zach Wilson better stay there and be their backup.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too, is he hasn't had
send us a couple D guys or a whole bunch of picks.
Right. Or those receivers.
That would make sense otherwise.
Yeah.
Even the Vikings, pulling a Brett Favre.
Yeah.
Just imagine if he was the quarterback of that team, they would still be playing.
Right. Right. And yeah, with Zach Wilson, maybe he just needs a good brain to learn under to develop himself.
He seems like an asshole.
Yeah, he everything I've seen and heard about the guy, it's he's
and if you're not a locker room guy, you ain't gonna make it.
Right. But it's another option to sit under but you could argue Joe Flacco, Super Bowl winning quarterback, he had his brain to pick. So it's
Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah. So who knows? But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. I think he said on this coming week's McAfee show he won't have a full decision made yet, so at least a couple weeks out yet. But hopefully by end of February they'll have an answer. So, but yeah, we appreciate you guys as always for tuning in. Be sure to check us out on all of our socials. You guys can find us anywhere and everywhere. Also, as well, a new partnership that we have made with an app called Lock Talk. That's LOCCTOCC. It is a social media app for sports betting, so you can look and see what the spread over under and money line is for just about every professional sports game. And under each game, you can see posts made about how people are betting on the game and what they think is going to happen. Feel free to go check it out. You can see our bets that are placed on there. Use code Seaver when you guys sign up. Yeah, and look for us on there. Collin at the Seaver Show, Austin at the Seaver Show. And yeah, we're excited for another weekend of football coming up with the NFC and AFC championship. Both of those should be great games. So we will see you guys next week. And thanks again for tuning in.